Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, a week of tragedy in Poway brings a call to action.
Someone has tricked you to think that we're all separate, but we're not. We're a human family. We're one species, one family, and we should stick together.
Community leaders come together to talk about the synagogue shooting and what can be done to prevent future attacks. New tent structures will house immigrant families detained at the border. See more of the newly built structures in Texas.
What the rollbacks mean is that kids will eat an extra 6 cups of salt over the time that they're in school.
Changes to school meal nutrition. The Trump administration is making it easier for districts to reintroduce foods that were phased out.
When I first started working here, I was 20 years old, and I'll be honest with you, I was it messes with your mortality a little bit because you see so much death around you.
And KPBS goes into San Diego's archives. See how the county stores every bit of evidence from its criminal cases. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. It's Friday, May 3rd. Thanks for joining us. I'm Susan Murphy. Tomorrow marks 1 week since a shooting at a Poway synagogue left 1 woman dead and 3 others injured. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman says the San Diego community is still trying to make sense of what happened.
Here in Carlsbad behind me, local community members and religious leaders are gathering to discuss the motive behind the Poway shooting and what can be done to prevent further incidents. They say, in general, love conquers all.
Well, I'm no hero, I'm not brave. I'm just tired of being afraid.
We don't want hate in our midst. And how do you counter hate? With love.
Rabbi Yerachim Eilfort was at the White House this week with the rabbi who was shot at the Poway synagogue. The man arrested for the shooting at the synagogue has been charged with murder, and the case is being prosecuted as a hate crime.
We need to have a full-fledged offensive against hatred and this type of intolerance, and through fighting it with kindness and being ready to defend ourselves.
To prevent other acts of violence, the rabbi says people need to be accepting of all.
We're so buried in the Facebooks and the WhatsApps and the text messaging, and as connected as we are, but we're losing human face-to-face personal connections. That's why this is important. To meet people who might not be like-minded, but to meet them and say, hello, this is who I am and this is who you are.
The suspected Poway shooter is also charged with setting fire to a mosque in Escondido.
It is a farce to think that anyone is better than anyone else.
Yusef Miller helps run the mosque and believes people are taught hatred.
Someone has tricked you to think that we're all separate, but we're not. We're a human family. We're one species, one family, and we should stick together.
Miller says we can get rid of this idea of what he calls otherness and learn how we are similar.
When we come together and people visit mosques and people visit churches and synagogues and people visit communities, schools, traditions and fairs, we bring that human warmth back together, and we talk and we socialize, and we realize that the families of Muslims or the families of Jews or the families of Christians all want the same thing for their kids. They all want the same thing for their spouses.
Rabbi Eilfort says until people can be accepting of all, places of worship need to be prepared for the worst.
You want to bring out the best in people? Do it with love.
Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
The shooting at the Shabbat Poway synagogue last weekend is raising questions about law enforcement's ability to stop violent white supremacy. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says authorities have had more success with other kinds of terrorism.
On Monday, authorities announced they had foiled plans for a bombing near L.A. The suspect allegedly said he was motivated by jihad and wanted vengeance for attacks on Muslims. His plans were thwarted after authorities monitored his extremist postings online and connected him with an undercover FBI informant. So why were authorities unable to prevent the Poway shooting? The suspect apparently also participated in extremist online forums, and he allegedly set fire to a mosque in Escondido 5 weeks before the synagogue shooting. Still, he evaded detection.
We've read in reporting that Homeland Security has de-emphasized domestic terrorists, white supremacists, at the expense of American lives, and I think we have to get to the bottom of that.
Congressman Scott Peters, whose district includes Poway, says the federal government needs a better accounting of the different kinds of extremist violence to make sure it's deploying its resources effectively.
I think we have under-attended to domestic terrorism, which this is.
Brian Levin is director of the Center for the Study of Violence and Extremism at CSU San Bernardino. He says the government has focused on fighting large organized terrorist groups, but the trend in extremist violence is toward individual actors radicalized by fragmented communities online.
Additionally, assailants are acting out in their home regions. So a lot of this is in both a geographic but also investigative area that the feds don't have as well covered as local authorities.
Levin supports a bill in the Senate that would require the Departments of Justice and Homeland Security and the FBI to report annually on domestic terrorist activities and focus their resources on the biggest threats. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
The Border Patrol is expanding its capacity to hold and process border crossers. Customs and Border Protection worked with a private contractor to build these new tent structures in Texas. The Border Patrol is trying to deal with a surge of crossings in recent months. The majority are family units, many of them seeking asylum. The new structures are located in El Paso and in southern Texas. They'll be in use through the end of the year. A new University of San Diego report shows that Mexico's bloodshed isn't just about drugs anymore. KPBS border reporter Jean Guerrero has the story.
The Justice in Mexico annual report used to be called Drug Violence in Mexico. The new title is Organized Crime and Violence in Mexico. Report author Octavio Rodriguez Ferreira says that's because oil theft and other criminal enterprises are fueling the violence now, too.
What used to be a mainly drug trafficking phenomenon, now it's becoming more broad.
The report says going after drug kingpins has been useless. The authors likened Mexico's violence to the mythical many-headed beast, the Hydra, which can't be slain by chopping off one head. That just makes two heads grow back. They say Mexico has to target all criminals, including corrupt politicians and elite CEOs, in order to, quote, starve the beast. Last year, homicides hit an all-time high of 33,000 in Mexico. Men, mayors, and journalists were the most frequent victims. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
Kristen Gaspar says she will seek another term on the San Diego County Board of Supervisors. The Republican made her 2020 run official with an announcement today. Gaspar's district includes parts of coastal North County, Escondido, and portions of San Diego. Last year, she ran for the 49th Congressional District, but failed to advance beyond the primary. Recently, we told you about the City of San Diego's archives, where documents are stored dating back to the 1800s. Today, we bring you a tour of a different kind of storage place. KPBS investigative reporter Claire Trageser found thousands of pieces of evidence stored from the county's criminal cases.
As you enter the San Diego Superior Court's evidence storage vaults, you're greeted with the sound of rushing water running through pipes overhead, labeled sanitary waste.
It's funny till you have to work under it all the time.
Bill Nix has run evidence storage for 30 years. He's worked down in the basement of the old courthouse and now the new one, cataloging and storing every piece of evidence that's used in the courtrooms above.
Basically, the envelope is the brain of the case, basically. So the exhibit list is in there. Any paper documents is usually stored in there, and they're filed here.
Nix is a librarian, sort of. He has a card catalog system that tells you where exactly each piece of evidence is and who's looked at it. And that's very important. If something goes missing, he'll know who to blame. But in other ways, Nix is nothing like a librarian.
We keep all of our firearms in boxes. This is all handguns here, the smaller boxes we keep. And again, they're separated by case number. All the red dots that you see, those are all murder cases.
For one thing, a lot of what he's storing are guns.
Sometimes we'll get items like this where it's stored in plexiglass.
Nix pulls out a giant assault rifle in a plexiglass case that's almost as tall as he is. He also points out other murder weapons.
Miscellaneous weapons. These are just items that, for one reason or another, were used to harm somebody.
The items include a few shovels, rakes, a mop, and some hockey sticks.
When I first started working here, I was 20 years old, and I'll be honest with you, I was a little, it messes with your mortality a little bit because you see so much death around you, pictures of it, and it's like, wow, you know, it can, but then it wears off, and you really don't see it after a while. I hate to admit it, but yeah, we've had a few creepy stories over here with the older stuff.
The oldest evidence Nix keeps is from a murder case back in the 1970s.
The person absconded, and there's a warrant out for them. So and whenever there's a warrant out, no matter what, we can't get rid of a case.
And that's another way Nix is not like a librarian. His purpose is not to hold on to all evidence forever, just as long as it might be needed in court.
We're responsible for maintaining and managing the exhibits all the way through the appellate process.
Michael Roddy is the executive officer for the San Diego Superior Court.
There's always a concern that years and years later, somebody may be exonerated if they were wrongly convicted, and of course the evidence could be important in that. And so, again, we wait till a case is fully completed, and then we even wait longer than that. I mean, we don't do it the exact minute that we can get rid of things.
Death penalty cases are kept until the person is executed or dies naturally. Murder cases are also kept a long time because there can be lengthy appeals. San Diego Superior Court stores about 30,000 exhibits, and 2/5 of them are from murder cases. To help free up space, they've been able to get rid of many of the giant foam boards people used to hold up in court, storing the images electronically instead. And a lot of evidence is now stored as photographs on DVDs. But the evidence room supervisor, Nix, says that wasn't true in the past. He's stored some very large items.
Once we had two bank robbers that they admitted all of their tools as evidence. They were huge drills and saws that their purpose was to be magnetized to the face of the door and for use, and they were ungodly heavy. We had buckets of ship chain, all with this one case. It was incredible. We've had a mock room that was made up of board, but when it was put together, it was a huge room. Car fenders, car doors, armchairs, full-size television sets, big screens. There was no, they could bring anything. We were lucky we didn't get anything bigger because they would have.
The last part of the evidence storage process is destruction or reuse.
The sheriff's office would get handguns. The DEA gets our narcotics and our ammunition.
And scales taken as evidence in drug cases used to be sold at auctions.
But then the bad people were buying them back. So now we stockpile them, then we donate them to local schools.
Yes, really.
Much better purpose, I think.
Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
If you have an archive space you think we should visit, email us at investigations@kpbs.org.
Fatal shooting at a Poway synagogue turns national attention toward hate crimes. Mexico suffers a spike in homicides and blame falls on American-made guns, and a proposal for new restrictions on short-term rentals, this time in the State Assembly. Join us for the KPBS Roundtable tonight at 8:30.
This week, we're talking about another sign of the strong economy, a big change for Amazon, and how Wall Street has its first plant-based food company. Joining me is SDSU marketing lecturer and co-founder of Bottom Line Marketing, Miro Kopik. Miro, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Susan.
Consumer reports saw a big jump in March, and we also had a strong jobs report out today. Is this a good sign of the strong economy for the year ahead?
Well, certainly consumer spending was up 0.9%, the most since August of 2009. Consumer spending represents 70% of all economic activity. So this is really good news. As we saw last week in the GDP report of GDP growth of 3.2%, that was driven by this consumer spending. Today's job report is even better news, 263,000 jobs added, and the unemployment rate went down to 3.6%, and real wages increased. So all this is really positive. But the issue is that, and where this gives momentum into this upcoming quarter, because for consumers, this quarter is really big. We just had Easter, there's Mother's Day, there's Father's Day, graduation, the beginning of summer vacation, so there's still a lot of spending. The bigger issue is that consumer debt has set a record. Americans owe more than $4 trillion. And what this means for the average credit card is the average American owes a balance of $4,300. If they just make the minimum payments, that means $700 in interest charges a year. At some point, consumer budgets are going to be impacted by this debt, and they're not going to be able to spend on the things that they were able to this last month. So we'll continue to watch.
Okay, and Amazon, known for its free 2-day shipping, is about to cut that into half to 1 day. So what's this all about?
Well, you know, Amazon is also announcing that they're increasing the subscription for the Amazon Prime service by 20% to $119. So it's kind of offsetting that, because if a service you're using is increasing by 20%, you need to see some value. And consumers really see free shipping or rapid shipping as a big value. So that's a big reason why Amazon is doing this. But also they're putting their money where their mouth is. They're going to invest this quarter $800 million in streamlining their logistics chain, so consumers by the end of the year in urban areas, suburban areas, and even rural areas will get their Amazon packages in 1 day. And what that means, great news for consumers, but it's going to mean a lot of concern for other retailers, because during the Christmas holidays, even though consumers, when they shop online, they look at price or selection, shipping is really important. It becomes #1 during the holidays when you need that gift there. And so retailers like Walmart and Macy's have to rethink their strategies about how they're going to do shipping when Amazon's going to deliver it in 1 day.
Okay, and the biggest Wall Street debut this year is fake meat. Why are so many investors hungry for Beyond Meat?
Well, you know, this is because consumer trends are saying that consumers are looking to improve their diets. They're looking at meat substitutes. Millennials also look at it from an environmental perspective that we'll discuss in a minute. So here's this company that earned less than $100 million last year. It lost $30 million in profits, and they are the most successful IPO, beating out Levi Strauss or Lyft, and the company is worth $3.7 billion. And what it means is that consumers are looking for meat substitutes. This is, you know, we've had veggie burgers around for a long time, but the taste wasn't there. All of a sudden, companies like Beyond Meat deliver both taste and texture that's similar to ground beef. This week, the Impossible Burger is being expanded at Burger King nationally by the end of the year. And big companies are taking note, like Nestle. They're going to launch the Awesome Burger in the fall. The environmental impact is very important for consumers. It requires more land to feed people with beef than any other product out there. In fact, beef uses 20 times more land, produces 20 times the greenhouse gases like methane and nitrous oxide than the same amount of protein that is plant-based, like beans, for example. So all of a sudden, both from an environmental perspective, a sustainability perspective, and hopefully a taste perspective, a company like Beyond Meat is going to be looked at, and people are looking to have a tasty burger.
And I had a tasty veggie burger just yesterday, so it's something to watch for sure. Miro Kopik, thank you so much for joining us.
As we continue through tonight, those low clouds fill back in. Partly cloudy for San Diego with a low of 60. Moving into Oceanside, your low going to be 56. Also on the cloudy side for tonight. Once again, the trend has been clouds out towards the coast, but as you head inland areas, not too foggy or dealing with the low cloud situation. Dry conditions in Borrego Springs with a low 62, 45 in Mount Laguna. Moving into your Saturday, well, we're going to be tracking out an upper level low. That's really going to help our marine layer fill right on in, not only for Southern California, but extending in towards Central and Northern California as well. It's going to bring some cooler air as well as more clouds for the coast. So looking at some clouds for your morning in Oceanside and San Diego, topping off in the upper 60s. We'll see some of that burn off and some sun to come for San Diego on your Saturday. 93 for the high in Borrego Springs and 65 in Mount Laguna. Enjoy that warmth because into Sunday, that low will continue to make its way further inland Ocean flow also going to be very dominant, and that's going to bring much cooler conditions for the state of California, including us here in San Diego, and not only for the coast, but into the deserts and mountains as well. For the early week, we're still on the dry side. Wet weather going to be spinning up across the middle of the country and warm out towards the southeast. So if you have any travel plans, just check in, especially if you're headed to Texas, Oklahoma, even out to portions of Nebraska and Kansas could be dealing with some thunderstorms. As for the next several days here at the coast, in the upper 60s, low clouds. Best chance for shower activity will be on your Monday as that upper level low moves on through. Then as we head into Wednesday, partial sunshine with a high of 64. If you're out towards the inland areas, you're going to notice that cool down, no longer in the 70s on your Sunday, high 72, then Monday at 68 with clouds and a chance for some showers and feeling that cool air sticking around for Tuesday. Also noticing a change up with your temperatures in the desert. So tomorrow, very warm, 93, 87 on Sunday, getting cooler air. And that cool trend continues for Monday and Tuesday, but no wet weather likely in towards the deserts. Could see a possible shower popping up in towards the mountains, but you'll definitely notice that colder air making a return here with highs in the 50s as we head into your Sunday and Monday. Reporting for KPBS News, I'm your AccuWeather meteorologist, Dajia Swad. Back to you.
Some of the work needed to build California's high-speed rail system is on hold. That's because the Trump administration has cut off all communication. The High-Speed Rail Authority provided the details in its latest project update. It says communication was shut down months ago. As a result, environmental reviews, engineering, and safety work are all frozen. President Trump has repeatedly criticized the cost of the project and is trying to block federal funding. The Trump administration is also rolling back nutritional guidelines for the nation's public schools. AP reporter Vanessa Alvarez tells us which foods might return to cafeterias and how some districts are refusing to go back.
Not ready yet. Let me give you a bit. Kids and families who rely on subsidized school lunches may soon be seeing some changes in their menus. The Trump administration is rolling back school meal nutritional requirements set by the Obama White House. The move will allow cafeteria operators to bring back things like white rice and flour tortillas. Proponents of the change say it's a matter of taste. Gay Anderson works for the School Nutrition Association, which represents cafeteria operators and suppliers like Domino's and Kellogg's.
We are not seeing this as a reversion or reverting to anything. We are seeing this as offering some great flexibility for the schools that have those few items that just we cannot get the children to eat.
But taste is a personal choice.
I would choose brown rice because brown rice is much more healthier than white rice, and I know that because my mom told me.
The program was a key aspect of former First Lady Michelle Obama's platform to help cultivate healthy eating habits in children amid alarming obesity rates. Schools had to switch to whole grain versions of food to retain federal funding for free meal programs. The Trump rollback has resulted in lawsuits by several states, as well as the Center for Science and the Public Interest.
We think that it harms kids, in short. We had this huge achievement, which is that Congress told the U.S. Department of Agriculture to write rules that would be better for kids' health for the school, meal, lunch, and breakfast programs. These programs serve 30 million children, 22 million of whom are low income.
Sodium and dairy standards are targeted as well.
What the rollbacks mean is that kids will eat an extra 6 cups of salt over the time that they're in school. 6 cups.
That's a lot of sodium.
That's a lot of sodium. And we know that what they're already eating today is making them sick.
Laura Benavides runs the Boston Public Schools Food and Nutritional Services. She says it will continue to follow the stricter standards.
I think because we are as in the business of education and educating our children, it's not only what they learn in the classroom, it's what they learn in the cafeteria. And we want them to be really good eaters.
And that's good news for health-conscious kids like Azara Tillett.
I love this the school lunch because before the lunch came in like plastic containers, but now they make it fresh every day and it tastes so much better.
The American Heart Association has also criticized the decision and is calling on school districts to stick to the previous standards. Vanessa Alvarez, The Associated Press.
Here's a recap of tonight's top stories. Religious leaders are talking about ways to prevent future acts of violence. Today's meeting in Carlsbad comes nearly 1 week after the deadly synagogue shooting in Poway. Organizers of the event are encouraging more socialization and understanding between different cultural and religious groups. New tent structures will help Border Patrol house border crossers. A private contractor built these shelters in El Paso and southern Texas. They'll mostly be used for family units. Texas has seen a surge in crossings in recent months. The tent structures will be in use through the end of the year. Kristen Gaspar will run for re-election on the San Diego County Board of Supervisors. Gaspar represents District 3, which includes parts of coastal North County, Escondido, and portions of San Diego. Supervisor Gaspar ran for Congress last year, but failed to advance beyond the primary. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. We end tonight with music from Live at the Belly Up. The show airs tonight at 11 on KPBS. Good night.
Super is not what it seems. There's the crowd.